Hello, bonsoir, and welcome to the Get French Football News Show. I'm your host, Nathan Staples, and joining me this week are Philippe Bargio and Goal.com's Mohamed Ali. With Ligue 1 in the review window now, there was one more game of the French football season to get out of the way before we could jet off on our summer holidays. But who would come out on top in the Coupe de France final? We discussed that and more after your latest headlines. Paris Saint-Germain completed their second successive domestic treble at the weekend after a 4-2 win against Marseille at the Stade de France. A brace from the departing Zlatan Ibrahimovic combined with strikes from Blaise Matuidi and Edinson Cavani was enough to see off their bitter Les Classiques rivals despite goals from Florian Thauvin and Michy Batshuayi. The match was also a test for the security measures that will be in place at the European Championships in 3 weeks' time, but reports of the measures taking longer than expected and creating huge queues have worried some onlookers. There was also reports of the Marseille fan coaches being stoned and tear gas being employed before security even let some in without checking their tickets first. Several managers have changed their jobs this week in Ligue 1 as Christian Gourcuff was officially unveiled as the new boss at Rennes. Nantes have employed former Lille and Montpellier coach René Girard, while Les Canaries' previous manager Michel Desicarian has joined relegated Reims. It has also been reported that Nice are set to announce a contract extension for Claude Puel in the next few days. In international news, Sevilla defender Adil Rami has been called up to the French squad as an extra reserve after reports emerged that there was concerns over the fitness of Raphael Varane. Les Bleus manager Didier Deschamps decided to play it safe and bring in another person in should the Real Madrid man be forced to miss the tournament. And in the last hour or so, Lyon owner Jean-Michel Aulas has hinted that midfielder Guedes Fofana's playing career may be over. The 25-year-old has struggled with injuries in the past 2 years, and it is reportedly set to call time on his playing days. And that's all for this week's news. And remember, to keep yourself up to date, head on over to our website at www.getfootballnewsfrance.com and follow us on Twitter at GFFN. We start this week with the Coupe de France final, and what an enthralling game it turned out to be. Despite the build-up talking about this possibly being a cakewalk, Marseille made a real game of it against PSG before succumbing to a 4-2 defeat. Philip, how did you feel the game went?
Well, it wasn't a cakewalk. Of that, that's pretty certain. It was 1-1, sorry, at halftime, and I thought Marseille gave a good account of themselves considering the situation they're in. So interim manager, not really know where the club is going. We'll talk about this afterwards. But I thought it was quite brave of Passy, the new manager, to play a 4-4-2. Thought the midfield was quite dynamic, very risk-taking. It was some kind of nothing to lose attitude. I think PSG could have done much better on the counter-attack in midfield, but basically I don't really have much to criticize in the first half from all the Marseille players. In so the four midfielders and two strikers, I thought Fletcher was quite helping quite a lot. Even though you don't see those things. I mean, you really need to watch a whole game to see that. That's where he gets his critics from sometimes. But yeah, I thought in the first half Marseille were quite good, and they were actually only surprised, shall we say, because two of PSG's goals were at the beginning of each half. So I thought that was a blow. The third goal is a mistake by Isla. I think if he doesn't make that mistake, if he doesn't lose the ball, PSG don't score the third goal, and you can see the heads drop down, and then there were two other goals to finish quite a good game, really, because it was naturally predicted as a one-sided game, which is it probably should have been. I mean, PSG did not have Verratti, did not have Thiago Motta. I think with that midfield, it may have been a bit more one-sided. But ifs and buts at the end of the day. So a good game, and I think Marseille can't be, can look back and say, well, at least we tried, which is good because that doesn't happen very often. That hasn't happened very often whenever PSG play.
Yeah, we'll mention later how Marseille have struggled this season, Mo, but they gave a really good account of themselves on Saturday and really at least went for the win in what many expected to be, like we say, a very easy game for Paris Saint-Germain.
Yeah, I agree with Phil. I think the game was lost in the first 2 or 3 minutes of each half, and it's a bit of a shame because obviously, given the anticipation of the final, to go 1-0 behind after a minute and 50 seconds is very, very demoralising after all that build-up as well. But I think the players did well to show some resilience, to show some fight, and come back into the game at half-time. But again, the same problems, the same deficiencies, kind of reared their head and ensured that all the good work that was done, was undone towards the end. I think some players did make a real fight of it. I also got the feeling that some players, I think they were too easily overawed and kind of had let their level slip towards the end. I mean, the issue with PSG is that they have world-class players in any given position, and a mistake, you're not playing, especially in the final, you're not playing the level of Lorient or Khan. You're playing the likes of Angel Di Maria, Zlatan Ibrahimovic, etc., etc. And one mistake, one lapse of concentration will punish you, and that showed on Saturday night, where the overall possession, overall tempo of the game. Marseille absorbed a lot of pressure for quite long periods as well. But all it took was one mistake, one lapse, one late tackle, etc. And that's where the goals are coming. You can easily pinpoint the source of the PSG goals, and that's been, indicative of the whole season, the way things have gone. Focus wasn't there, but in the end, you can't really fault the team performance. It was always going to be a huge ask to win at the weekend, to win the cup as well, considering the team that was put out and the level of the opponents. But all in all, you can't. It was an acceptable performance by some players. I thought some players' performances were still well off the pace, but the scoreline was more or less respectable.
Yeah, at least it wasn't an embarrassment on the final game of the season. So,
no.
But it was a final farewell for one player in particular, Philip, and that was obviously Zlatan Ibrahimovic's final match in a PSG shirt. And predictably, he come away with another double, as you may expect him to do. It was another good performance to top off a great final season with the club, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was good. He was getting annoyed actually in the first half, where the PSG midfield, and once again I mentioned some kind of Liga midfield and not a European midfield, as I believe Rabiot and Stambouli are quality players, but maybe not quite the type to play really big European games. But you could see him being slightly annoyed at the lack of balls he had in the first period, and that didn't particularly change. But once again, whenever there's a penalty, he usually scores them. He's missed a couple in his years at PSG, and his second goal was clinically taken against Mandanda. It's still, PSG's midfield still had to work very, very hard to get the ball to him, and sometimes he did get annoyed, but as usual he got the plaudits for being at the right moment at the right time. So one goal was a penalty, and I think overall this was probably one of his better performances in the second half of last season. Didn't do much. But he did the job as usual, and he will go down, of course. He'll be up there with Pauletta as one of PSG's great number 9. There's lots of rumours of him to Manchester United today, though.
Yes, and we'll wait on those, and as I will myself as well, very patiently. But just to summarise on Ibrahimovic, Mo, he's been a terrific professional at PSG for the last 4 years, and has really lifted them to the next level, hasn't he?
You mean if you're going to ask a Marseille fan about how well Ibrahimovic has done, you're going to get
Yes.
but no, he's made a significant impact. That's undeniable. I mean, I was saying a couple of weeks ago that if you look at the period between before Ibrahimovic arrived um, subsequent years, you can see a real difference. I mean, the PSG team of 2012 were still well off. They're quite unrecognizable from the team that you see before you today. And he's brought in a heightened level of professionalism. I remember reading a few articles at the time of his surprise and a few teammates. The fact that players did not give 100% in training. He kind of brought the world class professionalism and the way athletes at the very, very top do things, given their all in training. And he kind of was like a captain, but without the captain's armband. Like he was a very central figure. He was well connected to the PSG hierarchy. The president, would seek his counsel, etc. So not just on the field that PSG will miss him, but off it as well. And against I mean, a lot of teams and a lot of fans like myself would be kind of glad to see him go because he was very, very successful. Domestically, obviously, couldn't ask anything more of him. In the Champions League, a question mark still remains. Could he have done enough? I mean, he has gone missing in a few of those really crucial games for Paris Saint-Germain in the last couple of years. But overall, this was a player that you might not see again. And the fact that he's achieved all of that in a matter of 4 years. 4 years is really not that long at all. But to make such an impact at a top club is unheard of nowadays.
It was Ancelotti who said that you were talking about professionalism.
Yeah.
No. When you first got there, I think Ancelotti was the manager. Maybe it was Cambuer. It was anyway. I mean, Ancelotti, he did say on multiple occasions, not only Ibrahimovic is a good player, he's a model professional because you had players, most of them were French, coming in late and training. That will not surprise any of us. And Ibrahimovic was telling them, "Hey, what are you doing? You've got a job to do. You come here on time and you do your job. You're
Absolutely.
not here. You don't show up late. It's just a matter of being a professional."
Absolutely. There was still
Ancelotti really admired that, and it's usually I wasn't at the Camp des Loges when Ibrahimovic must have told off Cabaye and Matuidi or other French players, but I believe he only had to say it once for the players to actually respect the timetable. So this is the legacy he's leaving at PSG. His professionalism, even though he's won basically every major league in Europe apart from the Premiership. That may happen, but still very, very serious in what he does, which is great, and which is not said that often because he does seem a bit nonchalant sometimes. But the figure speaks for himself, and it is a shame. Of course, he could have done better. Of course, the game against Manchester City will always be what if, but still not a bad achievement at all.
No, and that's something that's probably lost on a few people. Is he is a excellent professional, even though he does like to have maybe a little bit of a joke and a bit self-assurance on himself sometimes. But let's talk about some of the issues that they had before kickoff. It was almost a test run of the Czechs they will be taking out during the European Championships, Philip. What was the reports of in France about the issues before the game?
I think most of the issues was also time waiting, and it was much more was written about it because it was a Classico and because it was a cup final. Now I didn't go to that game, because Saturday evening. But I did go to France versus Russia on a friendly, and indeed you get out of a station and you do have to wait not that long. I mean, maybe it was a bit more, but France versus Russia was also full, and there were maybe lots more segregation. But you did have to wait quite a bit, and I don't. I think it's actually a good thing, showing that we are prepared, and that there has been a lot of trouble. Well, that's just unfortunate, but I don't think there was any other way to do it. If you see where the train stations are and how to get to the ground, I don't think the authorities had a choice of doing it that way.
Mo, was there a little bit of a worry about this reoccurring in the Euros, especially with the reports of, say, security allowing some people in without checking their tickets? That's a worry ahead of the Euros?
Yeah, I mean, it's always a worry when to hear, reports that security hasn't gone as well as you might have imagined. But I think the Euros will just be on a whole different level. The procedures implemented is not just a domestic affair anymore. It's an international. It's an international tournament with various different procedures, etc. So I mean, as long as they learn this, I mean, I wouldn't even be. I'm not even sure that those that were present at the Stade de France on Saturday night in terms of security would even be there in a couple of weeks, since UEFA will take over the ground and implement their own policies. But of course, it's always quite concerning to see issues like that, especially given that it's a big game and it's kind of a dry run ahead of the opening game in a couple of weeks. I mean, I might be wrong in assuming that this was the last game ahead of the opening game of the Euros. So the fact that things haven't gone smoothly, and there are obviously incidences not only outside the stadium but also inside as well, that would give the authorities a cause of concern. Definitely, there's a lot to work on.
Yeah, and they'll make sure that they tighten those up before
Absolutely.
the championships in 3 weeks' time. Just to finish off with the Coupe de France talk, Philip, it was, like we mentioned, another domestic treble for PSG. Can anyone stop them in any competition domestically next year?
Well, I would say a lot of depends on Saturday evening's opponents and on the investment coming in. But I do believe that Lyon will have a much better season next season than this one. If we do some kind of a review, it's been quite a disappointing one for Lyon, and they've shown in the second half of the season what a good side they are. So I'm thinking just Lyon, but you never know. PSG may have a lot of injuries. I know that in the semi-final against Lorient, I mean, Zlatan got them out of jail there. I mean, it was 0-0, nothing was happening, 0 chances. Zlatan shoots straight at the keeper, who for some reason goes on one side or the other instead of staying. And if Zlatan is not there, this goes to extra time, maybe penalties, and maybe they lose on penalties. So Zlatan does have this kind of aura that makes defenders panic and goalkeepers panic. And maybe this, with him gone, maybe it will be much harder for them to score goals next season than it is this season. Even though he is getting on a bit. He is 34, and yes, PSG will probably get a younger striker. He still has the experience of scoring the big goals in the big games, and that's not something you can acquire if you're like 20 or something. So I believe it probably won't be as easy next season as this one, but it has been tremendously easy this season. Although you could also argue that some games against Lyon, as the refereeing decisions went PSG's way. So I do believe that next season's treble, if PSG do another domestic treble, it'll be a bit harder than this season.
Mo, is there anyone that you can see that can oppose PSG's dominance next season?
I'd like to say Marseille, but no, I think next year they'll find it very, very difficult. I mean, there's always, once you've won everything, I want everything again. I mean, how long can you keep it up for? Um, um, and the fact that Ibrahimovic is not there, and Ibrahimovic, I think you can attribute a lot of Paris Saint-Germain's success to Ibrahimovic. Um, and it just depends. I mean, obviously, it depends on who they sign and what how the squad looks on the first week of August. But at this moment in time, I would even go as far as to say they would not even do the treble, and probably we might return to another close fought title race. If Lyon can get the act together, you keep Lacazette, um, and with now this guaranteed participation, the brand new stadium, start flexing their muscle financially a little bit. If they make a couple of shrewd signings, I'd like, as been said, I like to see them, fighting back at the top as they were last season as well. Last season was very, very exciting. 2014-15 season was very, very exciting, and if we can see a rerun of that next year, that would obviously be very, very enticing for all concerned. Monaco, I'm not entirely sure, to be honest. But outside of Lyon, is there anybody else that can challenge Paris Saint-Germain? I'd say no. But definitely we won't be seeing a 31-point margin next year. That's a one-off.
Hopefully, we'd like to say a more competitive Ligue 1 season next year. But congrats to PSG again on their Coupe de France win. Another excellent one to add to that cabinet. Moving on to the losers of that cup final, and despite getting there, it hasn't been the best of seasons for Marseille, to say the least. They finished a disappointing 13th in the table and are set for another mass exodus in the summer. Mo, what will this team look like come August?
Good question. Nobody knows is the short answer. The long answer is that, well, out of a squad of realistically 18, shall we say, 18 first-team players, about 10 will go, and that's the minimum. So you have all the loanees that will return to their clubs, aside from Cabela. Steve Mandanda, Nicolas Nkulu, and Alexis Ramal have their contracts ended, and then there's Michi Batshuayi, who and Nsana Diarra, who almost certainly will depart one way or another. And
well, he is free though.
I mean, he is free. I mean, that's what the reports coming out tonight. He claims he's free, but obviously, an oral agreement is not really cast iron, legal agreement, to be honest. But it'll be interesting to see how that plays out. But as going back to the question you posed, Nathan, there's only 4 players left of that. Well, definitely in the first team this year, and I can count on one hand, Mendy, Cabela, Nkudu, and Rekik or Orlando, one of them, depending on how things go. And that's, there has to be a huge rebuilding job. And the worst thing about this is that the club doesn't even have the finances to complete a rebuilding job. So I don't really see how the club, the officials will assemble the playing squad. There's a massive financial hole to cover. First of all, because of the lack of European football next season. The club did make a 30 or to 40 million profit on sales last year, but obviously that has, a lot of people have been wondering, where has that money gone? Most of that has gone to plugging last season's loss, caused by the lack of European football in 2013-14 or 14-15 rather, and the rest will have to cover the cost of a really poor season. I mean, the Marseille are expected to lose about 2 to 3 million, up to 4 million even, in ticket sales. The fact that nobody's been attending the games, given the team's poor form, and there's going to be expected to be an even bigger loss. At least last year with the fire sale, there was at least a promise of Europa League football, a group stage participation Europa League, which means you have at least some guaranteed income for the year. But this year is absolutely a nightmare scenario, and it's been coming. We've all known this was going to happen in September, so it's not exactly a surprise. I don't know why. From what I have seen and from what I've read, it seems to be a bit of a surprise to some people at the club. But Margarita Louis-Dreyfus, the owner, was never going to inject any money. She made it very clear that the club, she's not going to inject any money into the club. So therefore, Marseille is a club that has to sustain itself. Essentially, it has to make its own money and live within its means. And it has failed to do so on a spectacular level for the last 3 to 4 seasons. And honestly, the saving grace would be that before June 23, when the club presents its financial accounts, that there is news of a buyer. Because if there isn't, and Vincent Lebrun remains as president, then it will really be a supermarket trolley dash of the Lidl kind. It won't be very pretty to see at all. It'll be very low cost. It worked for Atalanta Ajaccio maybe, but will it work for Marseille? Probably not.
It's not exactly the same size.
Yeah, absolutely. It will be massively painful to watch, and any hope of trying to enter the league. I mean, if you ask any Marseille fan 2-3 years ago, this will be the situation you find yourselves in come 2016. People just look at you and laugh. It's quite astounding how things have developed, and I know, I could predict what would happen. Anybody else could predict what would happen. Journalists, fans, etc. It was all there to see, but it's just been run really, really shoddily. It's been an awful example of management at the highest level for a top, proud European club, and it's quite sad to see, to be honest.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more, and that tells you with the finances and the things that how much of the sale of Michy Batshuayi in the summer could matter to the club moving forward with that many holes in the squad potentially. But Philip, they've had a pretty dreadful season, and to be honest, was there any hope to take out of it?
Well, actually, yes. I mean, there's a squad. In terms of, I think the quality of the players is not actually that bad. I mean, you've got at least one good player by line. So you got one world-class goalkeeper. I'm still having this debate about who is actually better. Is it Mandanda or Lois? Because Lois has not really been that mediatized in France, because Tottenham is not very big here, and people have been calling for Mandanda to start every game, every warm-up game for France, and actually playing. That's how good he's been. By far and away, is the best goalkeeper in the league. And I'm quite undecided on Nkulu, but I can still see a player like Diao, Lassana Diao. He's fantastic. Michy Batshuayi as well. Michy Batshuayi, I really admire him because of his youth and how he takes the pressure on, no problem. It really is extremely good. I haven't watched Marseille enough to form an opinion on what kind of season Nkulu has had. I actually thought that Ricky has not been that awful. I mean, he's been awful in some games, but not all the time. So the squad was average. The squad was average, and Marseille finished in an average position. There's also this home jinx, 11 draws. That's by far and away the biggest number of home draws in the league. The one that comes closest is Angers, who usually played 10 men behind the ball, waiting for something to happen up front, and not being very adventurous. But it worked. So yeah, it's I think mid-table it sounds about right. I think I could have done a bit better from what they had, but it was never going to be Europe though. Talks of relegation were very far-fetched, though. I mean, we did mention it, but we didn't really believe Marseille would go down. It would have been a tragedy, though.
No, and going back on their season, imagining someone like Steve Mandanda wasn't in goal and Michy Batshuayi, who contributed with goals and assists totaling about more than half of the club's goals, it's hard to imagine where they must have been if they didn't have players of that quality propping them up and keeping them level playing field. But we've discussed the finances, Mo, and the amount of players that will be leaving in the summer. What will it might be a difficult question, but what are the players they're going to sort of target in the summer to replace them? Is it bargain basement sort of trying to sign, or is it getting those maybe young players in that they maybe want cheaper?
Well, it just depends. I mean, assuming
the investment, of course.
Yeah, assuming there's no investment, I think it'll be signing 3 players, going around the top clubs again, the same way Manquillo and Lucas Silva were signed. Going to your Real Madrid, Barcelona's, or wherever, and try and negotiate a loan deal. Because I mean that's the only thing Marseille can offer now. A place where these players can grow up. It might have not worked for Lucas Silva, but it worked really, really well for Javier Manquillo. So, going to these clubs and promising them playing time in a difficult environment where they can perhaps grow up and be assured game time. That's the only use Marseille really have now. But other than that, 3 players from lower league clubs. From the lower in Ligue 1, that would cost probably 2, 3, 4 million euros out of pop. Those are the sort of profile. I wouldn't be surprised if it was wholly domestic as well. But yeah, that's assuming there's no investment. If there is investment, then the game will change. But yeah.
So what's the strategy? I mean, is it to get first of all the new investors, then the new managers, then the new players, or is there maybe something to say? Okay, that manager is not too bad. Let's stick with him, waiting for an investor, because it's still a big name. I mean, it will always be a massive name, and there's going to be a lot of managers moving around this summer. I mean, are they going to stick with Passy until someone finally buys him, or not?
I mean, that's pretty unclear at the moment because no one really knows. I mean, it's not come through the media how advanced these takeover deals are. I mean, it was announced in April, about 6 weeks ago, that the club's for sale, and obviously I would imagine that unless this has been going on for a few months, that it will take quite a while to get everything sorted. I mean, obviously. The Louis Dreyfus family have owned Marseille for 20 years, so I can imagine it takes a few, bit of time to get these guarantees through. Marseille already had one failed takeover sale in 2007, so I would imagine that it will take a few months at the very least to get the guarantee sorted to make sure everything's kosher. But at the moment, there is every chance that that it could be concluded or there could be some breakthrough within the next month. But obviously, while that could take some time, you've got the pressing issue of having about 4 or 5 players only in a squad of, a squad of 20, which you need to fill because, the competition is about, the Ligue 1 starts in about 75 days again, shall we say? That's not a lot of time at all. That really isn't a lot of time. And obviously, if that's an impasse, then, what manager would come in knowing that there's a bit of an uncertain future? Obviously, everything relies on, everything's right up in the air, to be honest. So I would not be surprised that the longer this goes on, the longer Passy remains as head coach. I don't think Marseille will appoint a full-time head coach until there's some sort of breakthrough. So it could very well mean Passy is in charge, which is okay. He hasn't done too bad, and he's experienced at the very least. He has been around for the last 3 managers, been around since the Deschamps era, and has worked and has been interim coach for multiple times. So he's a very, very safe pair of hands, but he is limited tactically to what he can do as well. But I think in this transitional period, he's very, very trustworthy. As for Lebrun, he will be around the longer this goes on. And then you can very well assure, in the absence of a general manager, a sporting director, and practically everybody else that is needed to run a successful club, he will make decisions, and therefore he will pick and go for these low cost players and these loans. I mean, he's very, very contradictory in what he says, and these contradictions are now coming back to bite him. The sound bites that, oh, we are aiming to be the top. Oh no, we don't have any money. We are going to be like a B club for the top clubs of Europe. Now we can't sign. We can't even get Tolvan on loan again. We have no resources whatsoever. That's the problem, to be honest, and that's where that's where the situation problem lies, because Marseille, okay, there's been a lot of problems, takeovers, selling the players rather, financial losses, etc. These are all problems that most clubs go into. It's only planning or effective management that kind of limits the problem in itself. But Marseille have at the helm a really, really, really bad president who is awful, appalling at his job, and that's kind of what's amplified the problem to the millionth degree. That's the long he stays. I mean, it's anyone's guess what's going to happen, to be honest.
Yeah. Unfortunately, I believe that we won't know much more on the situation until the start of next season. I really don't think the football world is everybody's going to watch Euro 2016. So until 10th of July, nobody's going to really care about Marseille, and
absolutely.
They're going to have to do a really big job of attracting investors during that time period. And when Euro 2016 finishes, it's back to pre-season training because the league starts in August.
And then there's still the Olympics, and all.
Yeah.
It's the worst possible year, I think.
Probably, yeah. If it had been last summer, it would have been good. I think.
It's the worst possible year, definitely.
Yeah, and so I don't really see some guy saying, "Okay, I'm going to be the new El Khelaifi and challenge PSG and give Marseille 100 million euros, like right now, with my checkbook." I mean, it can happen. I mean, it happened to Aston Villa with this Chinese person. So it can happen. I just don't see it. I just don't see. I really see that once in France, once Ligue 1 is switched off, it's switched off, and you really have to really be interested in Ligue 1 to actually take notice of pre-season training, of pre-season friendlies and stuff like that. So I really don't see anything happening before mid-July, if it happens.
I was going to mention then that a smart owner and a smart director would think, oh, we have plenty of people coming to the Stade Velodrome in the next couple of weeks with the Euros. We've got a couple of games hosting international people. Let's have a nice chat, show them the Velodrome full to capacity with fans, and see what they could do at a club like that.
It is hosting the semi-final.
Exactly.
After all, yeah.
I am also speaking about sane people that would do the right decisions, but that seems to not be the case at Marseille at the moment. But just to bookend this conversation, Mo, I've got a question that you might not be quite able to answer now, but what would seem like success for Marseille next season?
Well, I mean, anything that beats this season would obviously be considered a success. I mean, this year, 13th is an anomaly. I think it was absolutely disgraceful on everyone concerned that the club finished 13th. I think given, what occurred, obviously the manager leaving on the first day of the season, I think, okay, Europe could still be in a possibility, 6 at the very least. Marseille did sell a lot of players, but they did replace them with able players. The number of players that came in weren't awful. So the fact that the club finished 13th was an absolute disgrace, and only missed relegation by a few weeks as well. But next season, it depends. I mean, if there are a couple of shrewd signings, I think Marseille, a club like Marseille, cannot be out of Europe, completely 2 years in a row. So I think top six would be considered a success. Champions League, at this moment in time, you can forget about that. And you have to remember, this is Ligue 1. This is not the Premier League we're talking about. This isn't, if you look at on paper, can you fight with Nice and Rennes and to lesser degree Saint-Etienne maybe? Can you fight with them for Europa League place? And if Marseille fan would say no, then there's a big problem. Marseille aren't able to fight with these teams for a place. In the Europa League at the very least, then what's there to play for really? You might as well, anything below that cannot be considered a success at all. So I think Europe would be the minimal aim.
You mentioned Nice. Would you welcome back Ben Arfa?
I would welcome back Ben Arfa, absolutely. Would Ben Arfa come back? Maybe not the case. To be honest,
I'm not that sure that Nice have more money than Marseille. It's just
no. And I saw there was a really interesting interview that somebody linked to me on Twitter, and if you look at most of the teams in Europe that tend to do well, actually have a much less lower budget than Marseille. For example, Sevilla or Athletic Bilbao, etc. So it's really. It's really surprising that a club that still has a budget of 100 million plus a season cannot finish in the top 10. But that goes to show the level of inefficiency that's going around.
Yeah, and we're waiting for plenty of dominoes to fall in that situation, really, at the moment.
Absolutely.
Scouting at big clubs, and especially at Marseille and PSG, has always been a problem. I mean, PSG always had quite a budget, but before the Qataris had really poor seasons. I mean, not poor seasons, but not good, not great, not as good as it should be having, or as it should have had. But I do believe that with decent scouting, with a bit of investment done in scouting in the right persons, I think this can be maybe turned into a sort of low budget situation, which could actually go all right. Because if they have a squad with kids, they won't have lots of pressure because they say, what, they're all 17, 18. If they lose at Angers, doesn't matter. But maybe sometimes these things work. I mean, it worked for Nice this season.
And no pressure on the scouts then this summer as they go bargain hunting and try and rescue Marseille from the hole they're in. But we'll move on to clubs that have signed new managers this weekend. The managerial merry-go-round in Ligue got its first spin this weekend as Rennes announced Christian Gourcuff as their new manager. He was highly sought after by a couple of clubs, Philip. So was this the right move for him?
Well, for him, I mean, he has to make a choice between does he want to manage a club or does he want to manage a national team. Christian Gourcuff has historically been he is from Britain. He has managed Lorient very, very successfully. And he stopped that. He managed Lorient for a very, very long time, for 11 years. And now he went to Algiers. Was a decent record, but I think it's more of a sentimental reasons. Maybe he wanted to get back to Brittany, to get back to day-to-day management. Maybe some managers are not really cut out for international football management because of the scarcity of the games and all the games you have to see and all the pressure you're on afterwards. Maybe something happened in the Algerian squad. I don't know. And maybe he wanted also to put his son's career back on track. That's not impossible. He did spend a season in at Rennes before. It didn't last very long, but I didn't really see Courbis as a long-term solution. I think Gourcuff could stay a solid 3-4 years at Rennes, and that he can make them at least go in the Europa League. I'm quite certain that they have the academy to do that. They do not have any money, just like the most of Liga, but they are hardworking, and I believe they are one of those to watch in next season for Europa League qualification. Which I say, yeah, I honestly welcome this move. I think it's a great move. I think I like Gourcuff, and I think it's a good match between Gourcuff and Rennes.
Yeah, and it's a solid squad that he's taking over at Rennes, even though they lose Ousmane Dembele in the summer. Mo, is he the right fit for them to move them forward? I know they're looking now to push on and be consistently in the Europa League in the near future. Do you think he was the right man for the job?
Yeah, I definitely think he's the right man. Like Phil said, I think the profiles of the two parties seem to match very, very well. And I always kind of imagine Rennes underachieve a little bit, to be honest, considering that they've got such a really good academy, and they've got such a good system in place, infrastructure behind them as well. And they've been able to, aside from Courbis probably, but with Philippe Montagnier previously as well, that they should have maybe been pushing a lot more for the Europa League places at the very least as well, year in, year out. But I think he'll be able to first of all attract a couple of domestic players and implement some really, really a good style of football as well, and will demand results. And I think for sure, if he is able to get the best out of some players, I mean, obviously Ousmane Dembele has gone, but there are still a lot of decent players to work with. If he can shape his squad and impose his identity on the squad pretty quickly, I think next year there could be a kind of revelation of the season. Maybe this year's Nice, for example.
Yeah,
so just one thing to say about Gourcuff's year at Stade Rennais. He did get the sack for results being too not good enough. Rennes were bottom of the league back in 2001-2002 towards the end of January. So no pressure.
No pressure.
No, that won't jump on him quickly, will it? That won't be reminded every press until he wins a game if he starts poorly. But yeah, I think it's a good match as well. I mean, when you look at Rennes player for player, they are a reasonably talented squad. They've got a solid goalkeeper. Even without Dembele, they've got like Paul Georges and Tep, and he's been promising in the past. And Kamil Grosicki's had a decent season, and I've already predicted that he's likely to probably star for Poland as well. And they've got a solid base there to build a club that's got a really good youth system and bring extra quality from that, and they should be challenging really for a Europa League place next season at very minimum. They could be a surprise package if he gets them running. We also have. Sorry, carry on, Philip.
Do we know how much they're getting for Dembele from Dortmund? Or was it still undisclosed?
I don't think. They were.
You guys have an estimate, like 20 or 30 million, or maybe 40. I don't know.
There was figures bound around everywhere. So reportedly, there was a release clause of about 10 million euros, I believe. But it's gone all the way from there to about that amount with clauses that would rise to 30, 35. It's all over the place from what was there anything that you'd noticed, Mel, at all?
I mean, I saw 15 million with clauses that could probably take it to 20, 25. I think, 15 million is probably a good place to start. Yeah. Roughly. But yeah, you can never be too sure in these circumstances.
No, and it's difficult.
10 is a bit low, though. I mean,
yeah, I think
he is a major talent. I would say 20 is a solid estimation of his potential. And Dortmund will probably sell him to Bayern in 3 years for 60 million or something.
Probably.
As they always seem to do. But it's a good move. I mean, if the club can use those finances wisely on attracting 2 or 3, maybe even 4 players that will improve them overall, then they could really challenge for those Europe places next season. But like I was going to say, there's been a replacement for Michel Desicarian at Nantes, and it's former Liga manager René Girard who's coming in. Can he do the business with Le Canaries Philip?
Not sure what business. Yeah, I'm not. I'm not. You may have noticed I'm not as enthusiastic as Gourcuff. He's turned a bit sour at Lille, the style of play. And if I were not fan, I would be a bit disappointed, really. Derzakan picked up Nantes, made them Ligue 2 champions, an established side in Ligue 2 now. I don't think Girard is a type of guy who lets a club go down. He did win the league a few years ago, but he's actually the last manager to have won the league without being a PSG manager. But still, I think Derzakan's style was a bit more attractive, a bit more risk-taking, and that Girard is one of the main reasons why Lille's attacking form, shall we say, if you could call it, was so poor. And this didn't really help with Renard coming in, and it really needed a strong manager to finally put some dynamism in the attack. And I don't know, Nantes did have a lot of problems scoring goals, and if this starts to happen, if maybe not down there, but scoring just 1-2 goals or possibly a few scoreless games, then I can very easily see the media pointing fingers at Girard. So I wouldn't be not as not great.
He is good at showing up a defence, but that's for sure as well. Though at the same time, to think about that. But you do make a good point there, Philip. That I want to mention to Movov. They have struggled to score this season, and Girard's not exactly famous for bringing goals to a club like as he showed at Lille this season. But it should feel like a little bit of a coup for Nantes to get a manager who's won Ligue 1 before, surely.
Absolutely. I think they've gone more for stability, to be honest. In appointing a very safe manager, René Girard. I think it might be a little bit conservative in his play, but he has achieved some success at the very least. Maybe not. Not doing too well at the latter stages in Montpellier and in Lille, but he's a very experienced coach, and he's a decent manager as well, and I think maybe that's why they've gone for him. But I'm just wondering, Nantes have a very eccentric president, as I'd like to think, and he has fallen out with Zakarian previously, and I'm just wondering, maybe Girard did not have wholly positive relations with the last two presidents, so I'm not entirely sure how that will pan out. But in terms of the playing squad, I think it's a decent, not as enthusiastic like like you said, Phil, with Gourcuff at Rennes, but I think it'll be very, very interesting to see how this pans out. I mean, Nantes are still a decent, sized club in Ligue 1. They should be doing well. They've got fantastic support, and they've got, I think they're still in the phase, where they seem to be just fighting off relegation, being between like 12th or 15th in Ligue 1. Not safety is okay to them, but I think that they've got the resources to at least try and push into the top 10. And with Girard, who's done that with Montpellier, taking them from one stage to the next and into the Champions League and via the league title, I think they've got a person who knows how to do that as well. So there's something to work with.
I'm just looking at all these lack of scoring ability from Nantes, because it was a big problem last season where they only scored 29 goals. This season they scored 33, which is the second worst goal scored for total, and the last one was of course the record breakers, 3. But Nantes did finish behind Marseille, and so that meant something did have to change as well. You felt like Derzakan, he wanted to change. He didn't want to. It's not that he wanted to be there. He said, "Okay, I've been there 3 years. I've shown what I'm capable of doing, and I want a new challenge now."
and that new challenge is at Reims in League Two.
Yes, that new challenge is at Reims. That's a fantastic. To me, that's a great appointment for Reims. It's more a great appointment for Reims than it is a great job for D'Artagnan, who's probably going to do the same thing at Reims that he did at Nantes, which is put them back in the top division and makes them an established side. Reims, we did talk about this all season. Reims never should have gone down, but that's a great appointment. Speaking of actually Ligue 2 managers, there's also Brest who are trying to enroll Paul Le Guen, so ex-Rennes and PSG manager and Lyon manager, and actually he did manage Rangers as well, Rangers and maybe Spurs, or maybe not Spurs. Well, anyway, and it's still not happening. So Brest are still wanting Le Guen, but nothing has been signed yet.
An interesting one to keep an eye on, especially for those Ligue 2 fans and clubs going into Ligue 2 is what we want to talk about on our final topic this week. As we say goodbye to Troyes, Gazélec, Ajaccio and Reims from Ligue 1, but not necessarily all of their players. As is almost tradition in most of football, teams will look to take advantage of those relegations by plucking some of their best talent who deserve to stay in the league. So I'm going to start with you, Mo. Who from those relegated teams do you feel will stay in Ligue 1 next season with a new club?
Well, I think the easiest answer would be, there's a couple of players at Ram, that you can, that's a Ligue 1 club would do well to go get. So Eddie Préville, he'd be a very interesting choice for many clubs in Ligue 1. Issa Mandi as well, who's a very competent defender as well. Those are the names that jump out in my head at the moment. Gazélec, they've done really well, but individually, I'm not too sure how they would fare. Some players would fare at another club. I mean, the reason why Gazélec were initially successful during the first half of the season was that they played really well as a collective. So, I mean, trying to divide the team would be a pretty hard ask. But Larbi, the attacking midfielder, I've enjoyed watching him play. I think he's lost his level a little bit as the season wore on, but he was one of the league's best players early on in the campaign. I think between October to December, when Gazélec were on their magnificent run. And I think especially the newly promoted sides, Metz, for example, Nancy, they would do well to acquire his services. And at Troyes, they've been very, very poor all season. And I think the players that you want to pick from their squad are either 40 years old in the case of Benjamin Nivet, or already signed by Monaco in the case of Corentin Jean. I wouldn't necessarily take any of their players other than that, to be honest.
Yeah, and other than that, they've left the door like a Jimmy Cabot who went in January as well.
Absolutely.
Philip, is there anyone that jumps out of the page to you that if you were a Ligue 1 manager, you would get to add to your squad?
Not from Troyes. Gazélec, a few actually. Gazélec, I think they strike me as a side. They strike me like a side from a Ligue 2 side, but with players who can do the job in Ligue 1, especially in defensive abilities. And that's pretty much it. I'm thinking about players like David Ducourciou, who's really okay. Kader Morgan, who can really defend. Mohamed Larbi is really not a bad player. Alexandre Kouev, Kevin Mailly, Jérémy Bréchet as well. To me, he's still got it. He's still good enough to play in the top division. So there are a few players, but not attacking minded. I don't think. For us, it really is a completely different proposition. Cossiagas is that's Johnny Placide. He's a good goalkeeper. He's had a tough luck. Actually, the whole side has had tough luck towards the second half of the season. Mkoto did not feature well, but I think he's a good defender. Signorino is a bit just like a Gazélec player. He can play Ligue 1, he can play Ligue 2. He's good enough for both levels, but he really does strike me as a player who doesn't mind to play in Ligue 2 for a season if there's a project, and there's a project because Des Akanyo's here now, who can do quite well. I think Anthony Weber is the same sort of player. Diego should not be playing in second tier football. I don't think he's got a great left foot, and he comes inside. He's very good. Kankava as well, I think is pretty decent as well. And as for the three strikers, Bifouma, Charbonnier, and Depreville, they've got nothing to do in League 2 either. And I would think David Ngog would not want to, if he is still at the club, would not want to play second tier football.
He might.
That's quite a lot. So maybe this is some type of thing for Des Akanyo to think about, to say, okay, this club did mistakes last season. That's why they're in League 2. But with a squad like this, there's no way we're not going to get promoted. And this is what he has to do. But who is going to follow?
That's the real question.
That's the real question. So,
and you've both mentioned there that Reims really have the majority of players that you'll look at. I've banged on about Nicolas Depreville enough for people to understand that I think he's a really talented footballer who's come on leaps and bounds this season as a forward, not only just as a striker but as an assist maker for that Reims team that really struggled to create much in seasons before, and he's really come on. And I've said they might keep them, but I recommend clubs take a look at the likes of Grosjean Quier, although he's not had much game time because of injuries. When he has played, he's been a real success and was really great in that final game against Lyon. And someone like Jordan Sibacho will be terrific for them in League 2, I think, next season, where he'll probably be given more of a chance. And I wouldn't be surprised if clubs have noticed what he's given them at times coming off the bench, and especially early on in the season where he was really good. And you've already mentioned the one I thought of for teams coming up, Philippe, of Kankava. I think, again, a really solid defensive midfielder that will give you an extra edge. And to take one from you, Mo, I think Aissa Mondi, again, is a solid. He's not just a solid centre-back. He can play full-back if you need him to as well. And that versatility will be really good. I can see a club like Lorient and maybe taking someone like that. I think that would be an ideal signing for that kind of club, especially with him being club captain as well and showing his leadership skills as well. I think he's certainly destined to stay in the league next season. But that's all from us this week and for the 2015-16 Liga and French season. My thanks to Mo for joining us. You can follow him at Muhammad Ali _93 on Twitter. And Philip, thank you for joining us as always. My thanks to you at home, and we will hopefully be seeing you again very soon. A bientôt and goodbye.